I found that a lot of people do the majority of their spiritual growth work at night. At night is when your kundalini is active. Kundalini, just to say real quick, it represents a cosmic energy that is said that every single human being possesses. And for most people, it's dormant. And there's just enough of it to kind of sustain your life. But throughout your life, through meditation and yoga or psychedelics, and now there are a lot of people just spontaneously having this, what they call a kundalini awakening, where a lot of that energy all of a sudden is sort of free to roam throughout your body, throughout your nervous system. And once awakened, that kundalini energy has one goal, and that is to move you towards wholeness, to remove the barriers between this fragmented version of you, the personality, ego construct, and your divine nature. Now, if you don't care for the term kundalini, or it's a funny word, you never heard of it, just so you know, this fundamental energy is spoken about in many other parts of the world and many other religions and also cultures. The Christians, they call it the Holy Spirit. The Buddhists, they call it tumo. The Chinese martial artists, they call it qi. Regardless, it's just a word, it's just an energy that all of us have, and you might have yours awakened right now. And what this video is going to do is going to share with you the most common side effects of an activated kundalini energy that primarily happen to people at night. And if this is you, I can almost guarantee this video is going to offer you a lot of comfort, because some of these sort of side effects, they can be anywhere from inconvenient and disruptive to downright so out there that you don't even know who to go to. You can't really imagine yourself talking about your experiences with your friends and family. And all of that so many times point to an activated kundalini energy, which implies that you are on a path now, that you are moving towards wholeness, that you are being given this opportunity to heal all of the wounds and the unresolved issues and the limiting beliefs and all just the illusions that have been keeping you from happiness, from feeling whole. You might feel like there's been something missing your entire life, and this energy, even though it can be a bit disruptive, it is here to help you move beyond that and to find out who you truly are and where you truly belong in life. With that said, welcome to my YouTube channel, my friends. My name is Victor Oddo, and I'll go ahead now and share with you the most common side effects of having your kundalini active at night. The first one, I'll just say, erratic sleep patterns. You might be sleeping a lot, you might be not sleeping at all, even though you need the sleep. Sometimes people wake up at either between 3 and 5 a.m. over and over and over again, and it becomes like a pattern. Sometimes people wake up at like the exact same, like precise time. Maybe it's like 3:33 or something. And you do this over and over and over again. And it can maybe sometimes correlate with intense dreams. So you might find that just like your ordinary sleep experiences are different. It's like one of those things that you kind of pay attention to. You know, you probably, for years, you probably slept roughly the same amount of hours. Your dreams were like maybe within a similar range of types of colors and symbols and experiences, or maybe you didn't dream much at all. And there was maybe a bit of a normalcy there. And now you find yourself not necessarily going through anything in your life out of the ordinary, although sometimes you can. This can also happen during a period of a big transition, but not always. But regardless, you might find that your sleep is, your routine is changed enough to the point where you're watching videos like this, like wondering, what is going on with this? Why am I waking up at the exact same time every night? Why am I so exhausted? I have so much going on in my life. Why every time I go to lay down, I feel wired and awake and my brain won't stop? And this is just, there's a lot of different theories about this, but a lot of it comes down to what people call kundalini, which is like this force of energy that we all have within our body. It is said to be dormant in most people and lie kind of enclosed in like this cask at the base of our spine. But throughout our lives, we can do things that can trigger its opening, and this sort of like life force type of chi activating, flowy, feminine energy can suddenly start to like move through our body. And on one hand, what it is said to do, it's said to help purify your nervous system, release unconsciousness, and purify the soul in this lifetime. It's a very spiritual but also physical type of thing that can happen to a person. But this energy is energy, and it can sometimes not let you sleep. It sometimes is very like, it's like you can't stop. It's like after a psychedelic experience, you know, your body's tired and maybe even your mind is tired, but it's like the energy is there. You just can't sleep. You lay there until you hear the birds, and then you wake up and you didn't sleep a wink. And Kundalini can have a very similar effect to very like obvious and extreme degrees, all the way to where it's subtle. You might not notice any of this energy anywhere, and yet you're just noticing the sort of the ramifications of its presence. But nonetheless, you don't need sleeping pills. You don't need, if this is you and this is happening to you, this is something that I found that comes on in waves, and eventually it'll resolve. You'll sleep when you need to. It's a positive thing. I recommend not fighting it. And it's, yeah, something I've gone through countless times throughout the last 20 years of my life. Sometimes this Kundalini energy is a bit more obvious. It can manifest sometimes as hearing like noises within yourself. I know it sounds kind of weird, like not like a knock. I could tell, you can tell this is like away from me, right? I'm talking like zzz, like buzzing, like frequency. You can hear it, like a lot of energy, like static almost. Sometimes you can hear in your body. Some people will get like actual ringing in their ears for no explainable reason whatsoever. They don't have tinnitus, and it's just they got the ringing in the ears. That's a big one right there. This noise can sometimes not be there, or oftentimes accompanied with actual physical sensations of heat and warmth and energy moving. Oftentimes I found, and you'll read about this too, through the base, like up the base of the spine. But I've also experienced it like through my limbs, like bzzz, of this vibrational type of energy. And it's one of those things, man, that if you don't, before I knew this had happened, like what it was, I used to really, it's, the mind's a powerful thing, and you can easily freak yourself out. I'll give an example. Years ago, we had mold in our house and we didn't know about it. And I would find at night when the AC would kick on, I would start getting heart palpitations. But because it was just a very, very like, it wasn't like severe, but because I interpreted it as I might be having like major heart failure or something crazy, I might be about to have a heart attack, that became a very intense, you know, I was freaked out basically. I was like freaking out. I went to the doctor and I got all these tests done on my heart. I remember I even called my mom up and said, "Hey, is there like heart disease in the family?" And I was trying to investigate it because my mind didn't understand what it was. It was a simple side effect of the mold. And once the mold was gone, it was completely fine. I have no heart problems whatsoever. Same thing with you. You wake up in the middle of the night at 3:33 a.m. and you got buzzing, ringing in your freaking ears and energy jolting through your body. It's understandable why some people freak out, and they call it like a spiritual emergency. You can even look this term up online, but a lot of times I found these emergencies come from a simple lack of understanding. In fact, if you don't believe me, if it does happen to you, next time it happens, I challenge you and invite you to like really just let go and be with it. These noises and sensations I find oftentimes correlate with release, catharsis, upgrade. And what I learned earlier on, luckily, was that I could let go and sort of trust them. And that would sometimes make these exact same feelings kind of blissful. Like this frequency, this energy I'm discussing, it can be experienced in an ecstatic way, in a very blissful, almost like orgasmic, blissful, ecstatic sort of way, when not filtered through the fearful definitions of the mind. And nonetheless, like the more you can just sort of let it happen, the sooner the process will be done, the sooner you'll get some shut-eye, and just the smoother of an experience it'll be, obviously, if you're not like resisting it and waking up and calling your doctor and doing all the stuff I used to do before I knew what was happening to me. Sometimes this happens by itself, oftentimes accompanying some of the other things I said, the energy in particular, and even the noise. you might have what they call closed eye visuals. This is something that people who do psychedelics say, there's like a term, closed eye visuals. It means you close your eyes and you see stuff. Right now I'm closing my eyes and I don't really see anything. I see like, I'm facing a window, so I see like reddish. That's it, basically. I'm saying like you might have done no psychedelics ever in your life, and you find yourself waking up the same time every night, and not only is there noise, internal noise, and energy freaking going through your body for God knows why, what reason, but now you close your eyes and you're seeing things. It's like you're hallucinating. I used to see all sorts of stuff. I would see like geometric shapes. I would see like random images. Sometimes these like faces, sometimes like disturbing faces even. Just sometimes very alien, otherworldly like stuff. Some people see cool stuff. My buddy Aaron, he always sees like sacred geometry and things like that. Many of you do, and you're lucky. I see kind of weird stuff. Honestly, it's something I don't understand what I'm seeing. But nonetheless, there are actual images that sometimes move around, and there are times where it's more clear than others. But nonetheless, it happens sometimes when I'm going through a big upgrade during the nighttime. And like all the other ones, if filtered through fear, it can bring about panic and anxiety and even less sleep. Once again, same formula I recommend for this, if this is you, is like letting go. Enjoying the show if it's kind of neat. Otherwise, I eventually learned to kind of just ignore it, just tune it out, and just sort of like patiently give in and trust the process. And by the way, we haven't quite gotten into what I consider to be the really bizarre one. So if you think this is bizarre, just wait, because it's going to get a little bit more out there. This one is something I've only experienced a couple of times. They call it spontaneous kriyas. This is something usually that is specific to people with a kundalini awakening, but again, this is just a term. I don't recommend harping on that necessarily. It's what is it? A spontaneous kriya is basically like going into an involuntary yoga pose. Like you're laying there in bed and all of a sudden you like bust out downward facing dog or some other pose. But you might find that because there's all this energy and activation, your body will naturally start to kind of like move and organize and contort itself to allow for the energy to kind of move about as it decides it wants to. And sometimes this will happen again very naturally. And what I found is it's not like you're possessed and it just happens. Usually like there's this like this urge to do it. Like you just sort of intuitively know, if I just sit like this, it's going to feel better. So you might have that. I see this actually a decent amount when I run breathwork ceremonies. This is something that I'll see quite a bit because there's a lot of activation kind of happening if you've been to one of those. And this is something usually out of like a room of like 30 people, there's a couple people doing it. They're moving and they're doing all sorts of different things. But again, if you don't, in a breathwork ceremony, I warn them that this could happen oftentimes anyways. If you're just a regular person like I was, not really, signing up for any of this and just finding yourself doing like, these different poses in the middle of the night while you hear noises and feel energy and you're seeing crazy shit, you can imagine how that could be perceived as very disturbing and like there's something seriously wrong with me. And really it's like, no, this energy is like a very powerful life force. It's very activating. It allows you to tap into much higher states of consciousness. It allows your ego to soften. It allows your real purpose in life to start to kind of reveal itself to you. It gives you a type of internal guidance that allows you to rearrange your life in ways that you would never be able to think of or imagine or plan or control. You start to really tap into the divine will that is present in each individual. And yet it sometimes comes along with these side effects. Sometimes your dreams might fall under what Carl Jung calls like the archetypal realm category. Carl Jung, I talk about him all the time. I know my longtime followers know. I'm such a fan. I'm so impressed because he intuitively explored like the far reaches of the human psyche without psychedelics, from my understanding, and in a very, very pioneer way, where he realized that there's more, like Freudian psychology up until that point, for the most part, even somewhat still present in like very like Western psychology. The inner landscape, the train of our consciousness was believed to be very limited to what we experienced in life. Like from the moment we are born, we start tracking things in our subconscious mind. And it's like all of our mind activity, our conditioning, our personality, our sense of self is all limited to that. But Carl Jung, back in like the late 1800s, started to realize there's way more than that. He started to realize that we are all actually connected, as a lot of the spiritual yogis will say, and even physics will now confirm. He somehow, in his own experience, realized we are all connected. And he did a lot of his own dream exploration, is what I'm getting at. And he found that sometimes the dreams took on what he would call a numinous quality, or where you start to tap into like the archetypal realms, like the myth, like the collective human story myth, where there's like archetypal figures, archetypal entities almost, where he believed had their own identity, you might say, their own like frequency signature, and they're not just purely imagination. It's like a reality that we're all sort of a part of and sort of created from. And in our dream time, because for a variety of reasons, we can kind of like sometimes venture into these other realms, and you have dreams of things that you certainly didn't pick up in this lifetime. You see things, you see images, even creatures, and there are qualities to dreams sometimes, very alien-like sometimes, that go beyond like what like even though your subconscious mind, it kind of logs everything, and you might not have a conscious memory of all of it. For a fact, what you see in your dream sometimes, it ain't coming from this lifetime. So you might find that's happening with you in your dreams. You might be dreaming of extraterrestrials. You might be dreaming of archetypal images, things like that. And it can be very, there are like these universal symbols, like snakes, for example. I had a series of dreams recently where I kept being around like huge whales, and one time the whale ate me, and I was in the whale's stomach, and very, very like out there types of dreams, even though of course whales are like something we all know about, but maybe that's a bad example. But nonetheless, your dreams, you're waking up from some of these dreams thinking, what the hell was that? What's going on there? And there's this sense that there's something significant there. A lot of times when we would venture into these archetypal realms within the dream time, it is because we are on a path, we're on a journey, we are spiritually awakening, we're becoming individuated, as Carl Jung would say. But it can be kind of surprising, again, when all of a sudden you start having these types of dreams here and there that seem to be very real and hold great meaning, but also quite confusing. Some people will also find that they're having either lucid dreams, which is where you wake up and you're dreaming, and sometimes even having like an out-of-body experience. This happened to me maybe a handful of times, where many of the symptoms I described before would happen, the energy, the noise, and I'd find that sometimes I would kind of pop out of my body and float above it. And I found that to be one of the most awesome experiences ever. It's like, imagine being free of the burden of your physicality. You can like go through walls. You can pretty much do anything. You can imagine something and it's there. I put a little bit of time into trying to improve my skills with this, which I didn't get very far. Some people get pretty remarkable, where they can have pretty insane experiences. For me, I learned a couple things, but nonetheless, bizarre thing, popping out of your body. Like I know for myself, for a fact, that consciousness exists outside of the body because I've actually experienced it. And the last two, I will say, hands down, are the most bizarre. I'm just going to warn you. Not sure which one to start with, honestly. The first one I will call experiencing negative entities, sometimes in the dream time. This happened to me when I first had a spiritual awakening. I went through about a 4 or 5 day period, and it's happened here and there since, but like I went through a condensed period where every single time I fell asleep, it became a lucid dream where I was being like picked on and harassed and bullied and tormented by what I would call negative entities, beings who were dark, scary, and wanted to, cause me kind of harm. And this is one of the things that also caused me to create this video, because this was initially anyway, this was a very difficult thing to contend with, because I got to a point where I was terrified to fall asleep, because no matter what happened, I would fall asleep and these things would come at me. In fact, I remember like halfway through my experience on like day 3 or 4 of like not sleeping hardly at all because I would try to stay awake, I like accidentally passed out on my couch. And I say accidentally because I wasn't intending to. And I remember I was like this. I don't know why I remember this, but I was like laying like this on my couch. And a lot of times these dreams, they wouldn't even seem like dreams. Like I wouldn't even have known I had fallen asleep because everything would look the same, And I was like laying there unaware that I had fallen asleep, and then my pinky, I don't know why, was up like this. And then I felt this little hand like this, like these fingers wrap around my pinky, and I could just tell like they wanted to like break my finger or something. And at that moment I was like, oh shit, I fell asleep, and I had to wake myself up. Another time, just to say kind of a funny story, I remember I emerged into this dream, and I found myself kind of staring down this long hallway, and it was like there was just like fear in the air. This like strong fear just permeated the entire the reality I was in. And then I felt this warm breath on my neck. This like big, tall, like gargoyle freaking being breathing on my neck, and I just started running. Anyways, for 3 or 4 days, these entities messed with me. I was in fear. And then eventually, another reason I'm making this video, I saw this YouTube video with this one kid, this like young kid who was talking about the same exact phenomena, and I couldn't believe it. I was so grateful, because I was like, it was one of those things that was happening to me. And it's not that I thought I was going crazy, but I knew I was going through something that I knew I was not going to likely find a real solution for. It was like, if you watch the movie, like the Freddy Krueger movies, you fall asleep and he's got you. It was like that. It was crazy. And they were just so real. Anyways, thank God, this like one young kid made this YouTube video talking all about it. And he gave this solution at the end, which I applied. If this is you, this will help you as well. He said he stood up to these beings, and he said it helped. So the very next time I fell asleep, I like allowed myself to go to sleep. And of course I woke up and I was in my room. It didn't seem quite like a dream. And at first I wouldn't even be able to tell. But then eventually I saw like this entity kind of, sure enough, they eventually come and they show themselves. And sure enough, there was this entity, and it was like storming into my room. And rather than run and panic, and eventually I learned to wake myself up, I went at it, and I went towards it with like almost like standing up for myself. And then what happened was changed the whole dynamic from that day forward, up until the present moment. The moment I stopped being afraid, I sort of stood my ground. This thing I saw shrink, and it went from being very scary looking to pathetic looking, like sad, weak, not a threat whatsoever, almost like where you would pity it. And it sort of, in a very gumpy, uncoordinated way, like made its way out, and it jumped out my window. And I realized this whole time that these entities were largely just a reflection of my own fears that were controlling me. And the moment I stopped being controlled by them, just with a simple choice, the picture changed. And finally, last but certainly not least, experiences with extraterrestrials. This is unique because there's like a clear awareness that you are seeing what people call aliens. You might get this in your dreams. I've seen ships, I've seen beings, I've seen all sorts of types of things that when I woke up, I kind of knew that there was something more. It wasn't quite just a dream. I don't think this was archetypal in the way Carl Jung might have even still labeled it. This seemed like a form of contact was happening. I've also had the awareness of presences in my room, which is very unsettling. I always wondered that. I wondered why these ETs sometimes come in the middle of the night. Like, it seems like, bro, when I'm just sitting here watching Netflix, knocking the door, that would be a little bit more like easy to handle. But it's always like when you're it's at night, you're already feeling a little unsettled, and then there's like the presence of an ET. Anyways, I always thought that was kind of like not the smartest strategy if you're not trying to freak people out. But anyways, what I've gathered is that there's this process taking place, at least with me, and I've talked to other people as well, of assimilation of the idea that extraterrestrials are already here. And as much as many of us would be like, yeah, let's meet them, that'd be awesome, cool, they're here, they can save the day, I think that's easier said than done. I think for a lot of them anyway, they're a much higher level. They operate at different frequencies that we struggle to be in the midst of, basically, because it kicks up a lot of our fears. Similar to the dreams I was talking about, it was like I was going through a spiritual awakening. I was raising my consciousness, but as that was happening in my dream time, my fears were being kind of purged out and projected and mirrored into the dreams. It was like a similar, I think, phenomenon happens with extraterrestrials, where initially their presence might be perceived in fearful, kind of unsettling ways. But what I've noticed is a lot of times for me in the dream time, they'll be like completely cartoonish, or they have like a way of kind of buffering their appearance to minimize that effect. But anyway, this is just something that happens at night sometimes for me, and maybe you as well. Something you may have not been able to put words to or not wanted to even admit is actually happening, because the idea of it is pretty bizarre and a huge pill to swallow. Nonetheless, I see this also as a sign of the collective expansion of consciousness, that more and more people are becoming ready for something like this, and these experiences are happening. It's not just me. Do some research. Some people are seeing them, and some people are having way deeper experiences than I'm even conveying here. But nonetheless, just to kind of say it's happening. It's going around. You're not alone there. And my personal experience has been extremely positive. In fact, this used to happen to me also in ways where, like, I would see, oh, you're gonna think I'm freaking nuts. I'm surprised at how candid I'm being about this. But I used to have these experiences where these unusual looking beings, not at all humanoid, would sometimes hover above me on very small amounts of psychedelics, to the point where it wasn't just the effects. This is not a dreamtime thing, but they used to like kind of like just appear and come into my field of vision. And I remember like just really not fighting with them literally, but like not wanting them to be there. I'd go in the other room and I'd try to like not see them, but they would just keep coming. And then one time I eventually realized, I had this intuition that there's no way to like hide from this experience, Victor. And like all the other ones, I just chose to kind of face it. And I let go, and I said, okay, what the hell? What do you want? What could you possibly want with me? And I closed my eyes, and then what happened was this experience became very cleansing. The beings kind of like came like closer and closer and closer and closer, and then like almost started to kind of make their way through my body and my mind and my system. And it was very like euphoric, almost very releasing, very healing. And at the end of it, I felt like I had been raised up in my consciousness level. I felt like I had been like cleansed, purified, realigned. Like whatever they did was one of the greatest gifts that could have ever been given to me. It was like they were there to help. They were there to like, and it wasn't painful or anything. They were there to kind of like upgrade me, basically. So anyways, that's been my experience. I know you're going to go if you go on the internet, you'll hear all sorts of experiences. I personally think a lot of the negative ones are due to the fear factor. And I'm just sharing this out there for anybody to kind of just consider it. You know, this is not the truth. This is just my experience. But nonetheless, all of this I've been through, most of this I resisted with a very different outcome. The common denominator I found for all of this is to trust and surrender. And then the experience is nice. It's like welcomed. It's positive. It's like, hey, a good thing. And I don't have to run away in fear anymore. And I look at it as kind of like it reminds me of what a shaman once told me. After an ayahuasca ceremony, she was talking about how sometimes people are going to be with the medicine, she says, after the ceremony. We are having all the effects, but you're like, you go back to your room and you're just laying there in your bed, you know? And that's what happened to me many times. So my ears were kind of, my interest was piqued. I was like, what's she going to say about that? Because this to me was always kind of an inconvenient thing. It would prevent me from sleeping. It was kind of like unsettling, honestly. But the way she made it sound, she said, this is a gift. This is a blessing. The medicine's still with you. She's still helping you. The ayahuasca, she's still doing work with you. And I was like, okay. And that combined with what I said is my recommended attitude for all of these things. Thanks for watching, my friend. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe. That helps the video reach more people. And if you'd like, once a month, my wife Pattie and I, we put on these free online transformation sessions that might be a good complement to you if you relate with all this. We do breath work, we do QHHT, past life regressions, union shadow work workshops, a variety of other things as well. And we do it for free. We do it once a month. And if you'd like to be a part of that, I'll leave a link down below. And all you have to do is put in your email address and we'll send you the Zoom link and the date for the next one. So with that said, thank you so much, my friends, and hope to see you in the next video. Peace.